They had it all: strong debuts, big crossovers, and names that once stood beside the Justice League and the Avengers. These were the teams that looked like they'd last forever. But the Silver Age moved fast. New icons rose, trends shifted, and some teams simply couldn't keep up. Some were quietly retired, others fell apart inside the stories themselves. Most were never mentioned again. So, which once prominent teams faded from the spotlight, and why were they left behind? These are 10 Silver Age teams that disappeared. At number 10, Guardians of the Galaxy, original 1969 team. In 1969, Marvel introduced a team from the future: Vance Astro, Yondu, Charlie 27, and Martin X. They weren't from New York. They were survivors of alien invasions, fighting to free Earth's colonies in the 31st century. Their debut in Marvel Superheroes issue 18 was bold, different, and well-received. But after that, Marvel used them sparingly. Aside from a few team-ups, the Guardians didn't return regularly until Marvel Presents in 1975. And even that run was short-lived, with no ongoing title or major arcs. By the 1980s, they were barely mentioned. It wasn't until 1990, more than 2 decades later, that the original Guardians finally got their own series. They had a fresh setting, a clear threat, and strong designs, but they didn't get support. While other teams from the Silver Age grew into giants, the Guardians were left behind. They were Marvel's first cosmic resistance, but for years, they were nowhere to be found. At number 9, Sons of the Serpent. In 1966, the Avengers faced a threat unlike anything before: masked extremists known as the Sons of the Serpent. They didn't rob banks. They spread hate. Under hoods and slogans, they incited violence, targeted immigrants, and pushed division across America. Their first appearance in Avengers issue 32 and 33 ended with a brutal unmasking. The leader, General Chen, was exposed as a foreign agent trying to destabilize the country. The message hit hard. The Serpents returned in the 1970s, this time hiding behind media figures and political doublespeak, but with new leaders, new plans, and the same defeat. By the late 70s, they were gone. Marvel moved on, and the Sons of the Serpent, once a bold symbol of real-world hatred, became background villains, scattered across occasional Daredevil or Black Panther stories. They started as one of Marvel's most controversial and confrontational teams, but after their early impact, they were pushed aside and slowly disappeared from center stage. At number 8, The Enforcers. The Enforcers debuted in Amazing Spider-Man issue 10, 1964, bringing street-level muscle to Marvel's early pages. Montana wielded a lasso, Fancy Dan brought sharp footwork and speed, and Ox delivered brute strength. They didn't need powers, just grit. In the Silver Age, they were everywhere. They often worked for Big Man and Green Goblin, clashed with Daredevil, and even tangled with the Human Torch in early team-ups. Whenever a villain needed backup, the Enforcers were the call. But they never evolved. As Marvel's world filled with gods, mutants, and cosmic threats, the Enforcers stayed the same. No upgrades and zero spotlight. By the 1980s, they were reduced to cameos and quick takedowns. Hired goons who barely lasted a page. Their last notable arcs faded with the era that created them. From their sharp debut in 1964 to their quiet fade by the mid-1980s, the Enforcers went from recurring threats to background noise. And Marvel never really brought them back. Forget crossovers and cameos. These next teams were wild. One fought in dinosaur jungles, one worked for Red Skull, one robbed entire cities dressed as clowns. They weren't just weird, they were dangerous. And Marvel buried them anyway. At number 7, Savage Land Mutates. In 1969, Magneto created a new kind of villain team, not from Earth's cities, but from its hidden jungle. The Savage Land Mutates debuted in X-Men issue 62 and 63, deep in Antarctica's prehistoric wilderness. They were raw and unpredictable. Amphibious could leap and crush. Brainchild used his intellect to trap enemies. Barbarous brought four-armed brute force. Gaza fought without sight, and Lupo led animal hordes. Together, they overwhelmed the X-Men in their own territory. But after Magneto's defeat, the team collapsed. Without a leader, the Mutates turned into scattered threats. They popped up occasionally in Khazar arcs or stray X-Men adventures, always as jungle diversions, never central threats. They had the setting, they had unique powers, but they never grew past their first battle. What began as Magneto's new weapon lost its purpose, and the Savage Land Mutates once wild, chaotic, and dangerous, were left behind in the jungle they came from. At number 6, the Exiles, aka Red Skull's Exiles. In 1968, the Red Skull brought together a brutal team from his past, the Exiles. Veterans of the Axis, men like Iron Hand Hauptmann, Baldini, and Gruning had once fought for the worst cause imaginable. Now, they were hiding in exile until the Skull needed them again. In Captain America issue 102-104, he summoned them for one final mission: seize the Cosmic Cube. But true to form, the Skull betrayed them. The Exiles turned on him, forcing a chaotic battle where Captain America, trapped in the Skull's body, had to fight all sides at once. In the end, the Exiles were defeated and left behind. They swore revenge, but it never came. After their 1968 mission, the Exiles appeared briefly again in late 60s and early 70s issues, then largely disappeared from Marvel continuity. They were built for war, used once and then erased, and the Exiles who were loyal to the wrong man but disappeared with him. At number 5, Circus of Crime. In 1962, they made their entrance in Incredible Hulk issue 3, a carnival hiding a crew of criminals. The ringmaster led them with a hypnotic stare and a top hat. His performers, a strongman, an acrobat, a clown, played the roles of entertainers by day and thieves by night. Throughout the Silver Age, the Circus of Crime tangled with nearly every street-level hero. Ant-Man, Daredevil, Thor, Spider-Man all faced them. They weren't powerful, but they were persistent. Their hypnotism tricks worked once or maybe twice. But as supervillains grew stronger, the circus acts started to look small. By the 1980s, they were background players. They faced quick defeats and made short cameos. The ringmaster occasionally resurfaced, only to be outmatched by minor heroes. They had a spotlight once, with whole audiences hypnotized under the tent, robbed blind by a crew in makeup. But the audience moved on, and the Circus of Crime, once a recurring threat, never took center stage again. At number 4, Batrocks Brigade. In 1968, Captain America issue 105 introduced Batrocks Brigade, his first organized ensemble including the Swordsman and Living Laser. Led by the French mercenary Georges Batroc, the group combined style and muscle. The Swordsman, the Living Laser, and other hired thugs joined him to take on Captain America. Batroc wasn't superhuman, but his precision, speed, and arrogance made him a standout. And when he brought backup, he nearly turned the tide. During the Silver Age, the brigade was more than a gimmick. They were a threat. But it didn't last. The members rotated, the schemes failed, and Marvel stopped building them as a serious unit. By the 1970s, the brigade existed mostly in passing references, a name used whenever Batroc hired muscle. There were no rematches, so no returns. Batroc remained a solo act. The brigade faded. For a moment, they fought toe-to-toe with Steve Rogers. But in the years that followed, Batrocks Brigade quietly disappeared from the fight. Now, the final 3. One tried to destroy America from the inside, one staged a global war, and one was Marvel's deadliest villain team until it destroyed itself. At number 3, Zodiac, aka the Zodiac Cartel. The Zodiac Cartel debuted in Avengers issue 72. 1970, a coordinated alliance of 12 supercriminals, each named after a zodiac sign. Led by Taurus, Cornelius Van Lunt, the group combined strategy, symbolism, and scale. Their early missions were ambitious. They targeted the Avengers, nearly killed Iron Man, and wielded the Zodiac key to cripple entire cities. But control didn't last. Scorpio, one of their own, turned against them. He created android duplicates of the Zodiac and declared war on the originals. Soon after, the vigilante Scourge appeared, assassinating multiple members across titles. By the time the West Coast Avengers faced them again in the 1980s, the team was shattered. Most of the original 12 were dead or replaced. Later versions of Zodiac emerged. Alternate realities, reboots, even magic-based offshoots, but none matched the legacy of the first. Introduced in 1970 with structure and style, the Zodiac Cartel unraveled within a decade, and Marvel let them disappear with the pieces. At number 2, Factor 3. In 1967, X-Men issue 28 introduced a new threat, a secret society of mutant villains working under one name, Factor 3. Led by the mysterious Mutant Master, the group included the Blob, Mastermind, Eunice the Untouchable, and the Vanisher. Their goal wasn't conquest, it was chaos. They plotted to start World War III and blame humans, forcing mutant kind to rise. And for a time, they were winning. They captured the X-Men, and they also turned allies against each other. But the plan fell apart when the truth came out. The Mutant Master wasn't even a mutant. He was an alien manipulating both sides. Betrayed, the villains turned on their leader. With the X-Men, they took him down. That was the end. Following X-Men number 39, the original Factor 3 disbanded. Its members later unrelated to the title, and the organization's name rarely resurfaced. They brought the X-Men to the brink, but when the real enemy showed himself, the team that almost changed everything collapsed in a single issue. At number 1, the Frightful Four. In 1965, Marvel flipped the formula. The Wizard formed a team not to save the world, but to destroy its most famous heroes. With Sandman's strength, Trapster's tech, and Medusa's living hair, the Frightful Four were the Fantastic Four's dark reflection. Their debut in Fantastic Four number 36 made an impact. They caught Marvel's first family off guard and nearly pulled off the impossible. For a time, they were the team to watch, but it didn't hold. Medusa left to rejoin the Inhumans, then Sandman reformed. The Wizard kept the name alive, replacing teammates again and again, but the chemistry never returned. By the 1970s, their appearances were limited to single-issue defeats, with little build-up and no lasting arcs. They just faced defeats. Despite going through nearly 20 lineups, none brought the fear back. They started as Marvel's first supervillain team built to rival heroes. But without the original four, the threat collapsed, and the Frightful Four faded from the spotlight they once owned. With this, we end today's video. We'll be back with a new video shortly. Until then, happy watching and do subscribe to our channel if you still haven't.